When you were elected to Parliament in '98, what is one thing? What is one thing for which you were determined to campaign that you believed would benefit not only your constituents but the whole nation?
Well, then in '98, my passion was for constitution reform, quite frankly, because we just come through a very bitter election period with post-election confusion, Herdmanston Accord, and I actually had been quite involved because after the violence and social unrest in '97, as you may recall, CARICOM brokered a peace accord called the Herdmanston Accord. And one of the things that it required was political dialogue between the parties. So each party, the PBP and the PNC, chose 3 people. And I was one of the 3 that the PNC chose. It's not something that is widely known. But for 3 years, the 2 parties met every afternoon almost in a city hotel, and we dialogued about everything. And while that was happening, there was also the case of Esther Pereira versus the chief elections officer. That was a case challenging the validity of the 1997 elections. I was a junior lawyer to Mr. Peter Britton, who was senior counsel at the time. We represented a petitioner. So during the day, I would be doing that case, and then in the afternoons, I would be at a dialogue, and whenever Parliament was convened, I was in Parliament. But the whole thrust was towards constitutional reform, because it was accepted that the Constitution as it was, and I hasten to say that even as it is now, still has, I think, many bad features. And by bad, I mean features that are not helpful to the development of a cohesive society. We still have this executive presidency that we have diluted its potency a great deal. But when you have a highly charged political environment, and then overlay that with issues of race and ethnicity, and social stratas and class issues, when one person wins the presidency, there's a sense that one group has won and one group is therefore locked out. And so that is not helpful. It could be helpful in societies that have what are referred to as homogeneous societies, large groups that are comfortable. But when you have diverse ethnicities and cultures, such as Guyana, and this winner-take-all event on one day where one person wins it all, it does not augur well. You know, one of the things I really had advocated for was the splitting of elections for president and as against the assembly, like the way it is in America. I think there too much emphasis is placed on this one event on one day, and so you get a sense that it's a winner-take-all. As opposed to, let us stagger the presidency on a different 2 years before or 2 years after elections to National Assembly. Give more power to parliamentarians so that they could give representation to their constituents. As it is now, we have a party-list system which says that you vote for the party and not the actual member of parliament, and that I think is an anachronism. It is an unfortunate feature of our democracy that has to go. We really need people being accountable to people. Elected officials need to be accountable to people and not placed into parliament by the party. And I think it's been another feature that has kept us back, because it has really promoted, to a large extent, the paramountcy of the party over the paramountcy of the people. So those are things that I fought for. Of course, um, many of my views didn't sit well with Mr. Hoyt, but he respected them, or with the party. Uh, and so those are the things coming in as a young member of parliament that, of course, very idealistic, which is not necessarily a bad thing. But these were the things that not just myself, but the young Turks, as we were called,
Right.
back in '97. Those are the things we were advocating for, uh, a form of a power sharing model, because we recognize that the Constitution, as is, really kept the races and the groups pitted against each other rather than working together.
If I may go to the chat room, Carl asked, what specific efforts are being made to restore an atmosphere of safety and security in Guyanese citizens?
Well, I think we have a lot of rhetoric. I personally believe that we need to try something new. What and it has to One of the things we have to do is to have the government and the opposition parties working together on this issue of national security. It was recently demonstrated in uh, Trinidad and Tobago, where the Prime Minister and the leader of the opposition actually stood together and declared their joint efforts to fight it. But as you know, we have the opposition and the government are estranged and are at odds over the issue of the Minister of Home Affairs, who has responsibility for national security. But certainly there has to be something different, because what is happening, it is my view, that the criminals are becoming emboldened by the fact that the politicians are divided. And whilst we are fighting each other, they are making hay while the sun shines, if I can use an old, one of those old time proverbs. So we need a demonstration from the leadership of this country that this is a matter that concerns and affects all of us, and that we are prepared to work together to resolve it. Um, we have in the opposition very good people with police and military backgrounds who I believe can offer good assistance. The government has to accept that it alone cannot solve this problem. And it's not just for security, but Selwyn, the World Bank statistics say that Guyana is the country of all the countries in the world. Guyana ranks number one as being the most affected by the brain drain. 86% of our skilled labor now lives and works in a developed country. That's a staggering figure. But what I like to look at is the other side of it. It really means that about 12 to 14% of those who remain are trying to hold the country together. That is, provide national security, an education system, health care, build bridges and maintain them, provide development opportunities and so forth. The point I'm making is 12% of your skills cannot do the job. Especially, and then when you extrapolate, you realize that 12 and 14% is fighting. They're not united. And then about 50% of that amount are waiting to migrate. So the point is, it is in our best interest to have some kind of working understanding that yes, there's a government and yes, there's an opposition, but there are certain fundamental pillars in our society that we will have to find common ground on. National security, education, health, agriculture, certain things should be sacrosanct and sacred that we must find a way to work together on, because the point I make is that if another government was simply to go into office, it will not result in an automatic improvement, because that other government will not have all of the skills required to bring to bear to solve the problem. It is beyond us. We have transnational crimes. We have weapons. Brazil is our border neighbor. bordering us. They are a mass producer of weapons. Weapons are flowing through. We are contiguous to Colombia. The drugs continue to flow. So these are not issues that one minister can handle. There really needs to be a concerted effort. And we actually came close because in 2001, there was actually a border national security committee established. It was chaired by Ralph Ramkarant, co-chaired by David Granger. I was a member of that committee. The Minister of Home Affairs was a member of that committee, and we worked well together. Again, these are not many things that many people know because of the nature of our work. Not that it was secret, but many of the things that we dealt with could be classified as confidential and even to some extent secret. But we were able to put aside our differences and work looking at our national security issues, our border issues, and what was happening within Guyana. And we actually gave some prescriptions. But lo and behold, the report that we produced never seemed to have found support higher up, and so that very good example of us working together was allowed to fade and to go away. So in the meantime, we're doing we kind of holding things together, and I think the police force is stretched to its limit. Its morale is low, public impression of it is low. And the thieves, as I said, are becoming more emboldened by it. So I would start with a demonstration from the leaders, and I would have to include myself in that, showing the people of Guyana and those who are looking on from abroad that we are prepared in the national interest to put aside our differences. Every single day, there are about 2 or 3, you open the newspapers and there's some body discovered somewhere, man shot, person's throat slit, and then of course you got after that domestic violence. We just have an epidemic, and it has to be stemmed.